Once you started talking to him and getting information from him, I mean, did you find that? Well, obviously you're saying he cooperated, but did you find that he was special then, or was it later on that you figured like, okay, this guy's different from these average guys? Was it right away, or was it over time?
Well, it takes time to evaluate that. You can't tell in first encounters, especially in that situation. Because we had a lot of things that we had to think about along with this. Number one was he had been using narcotics up until then, and he was motivated to save the girl that came in. He wanted to make one of the reasons he wanted to make a deal with us was he wanted her, from the girl from California that he flew out here with, to be released and no charges. And that in return for his cooperation. Well, we had to think a lot about, is that enough to really convince a guy to go over the edge? Because that's one tough step when you actually make a commitment to the government, and we say, you're going to tell us every crime you ever committed. And if you don't tell us, and we find out about a crime, it will overturn any agreement you have with us, and you'll be charged with the full 20 years. In his count, I think we only had you charged with one 20-year count of RICO. But the rest of the crew were charged with 2 and 3 counts of RICO, like 60 years.
Right stuff. In relationship to the crew, how did you see Dom in terms of those other guys that were in the DeMeo crew and that whole realm? I mean, how did you see him in relationship to them?
Well, we already knew that his role was Nino's driver. He was his nephew. He lived in the house with him. And he was the collector. He went around collecting for, Freddie had told us that Dominick would come over and pick up the money. Anybody who does that is in a high position. They don't just let anybody, here's 50 grand, hope you can get it over to where it goes.
Right.
Well, it's something you said that was very interesting. You said it a while back, pertaining to what we're talking about. Was Art said, for a non-made guy, I was the only one they ever heard of. It was actually like an acting capo.
You are the only one. I've never heard of another guy getting that kind of respect.
Who do you think, and I'm going to jump around a little bit here. Who do you think was the most ruthless of that whole crew that you dealt with, the DeMeo crew? I mean, who was the most treacherous?
Well, I couldn't even say, because I think Beasy expressed it best. It was like having 5 serial killers all in one gang. And the 5 of them, I think, were probably equally vicious. And we've learned most of it from Dominick later, how vicious those guys were. And I think every one of them enjoyed killing. As Dom used to say, they got into a frenzy. They even had, they would be upstaged if one guy killed somebody and they weren't involved, and then they want to kill somebody.
Right.
Maybe that was the type. I mean, we know, for example, when we later, after we were finished, we got a call. Kenny McCabe and I, Detective McCabe and myself, got a call from a guy out in Long Island, had been arrested. He was Henry Borelli's uncle, and he was involved in the French Connection.
Yeah, the smack case.
Right. And I'm trying to think of his name now.
I can't remember.
I know. I actually do know, but I can't think of the name. But this guy was his uncle. He was a big narcotics dealer, and he called and asked us to come out. He was at the Suffolk County House of Detention on charge of murder. And he called us and asked us to if we'd come out and talk to him. Well, we knew who he was,
Right.
and we said sure. And so Kenny and I went out and went to the prison, and we spent 4 hours out there one whole morning with him. And he told us that, we told him about Henry Borelli. We had arrested Henry Borelli, and we're the guys who put him away. He says, I knew when Henry was with the DeMeo crew. He says, Roy DeMeo used to ask Henry for me to come down and visit. And he says, I would never go there because I didn't trust those guys. He said, they were vicious. I said, well, is it safe to say that you operated between the 5 families with narcotics? He says, yeah. He says, I had immunity from the 5 families. When it came to narcotics, I'm the guy, one of the guys that they could deal with freely. So he said, I knew all the 5 families. He says, the Mayo crew was the worst one that I knew of. And that was coming from pretty high source. This
Right.
guy was really big.
Yeah, he was a tough guy.
But and he was, the other thing he said, well, he was a killer. He says, one of the other reasons I didn't go there was I always told Henry on the side, he said, I always felt I was going to go and have to kill Roy DeMeo for Henry someday. So I didn't want to get friendly with him.
Gotcha. How did your relationship start to develop with Dominick? I mean, how did you become closer than the regular relationship you would have with a witness?
Okay. The way that the relationship between us went was, as soon as he made his agreement, verbal agreement with us to cooperate up in the U.S. Attorney's Office, he became my property. I'm the one now. He's in my custody.
Right.
I'm responsible for him and everything that happens to him. We never have noise back here. I mean, I've never heard that saw before.
It's all right. All right. So.
Point.